Agwato, long life, Hekaba, welcome. Adupai Ori Egun, we thank the ancestors for the blessing of their wisdom. Today we're going to continue with our conversation about OrIki Egun. The first OrIki we're going to take a look at is OrIki Adimu Egun. The word Adimu refers to non-blood offerings, so it's typically food offerings. Adimu, I'm not sure what the lesion there is. I would say crown of the mouth or effect of the mouth, perhaps. So the OrIki, I'm going to pronounce it, and then we'll go over it line by line. Egungun wa yana wa ne ni je wa me mu. Egungun baba iya yana wa o je wa bogbi pa. Egungun wa yana wa ashe. So the first line, Egungun wa yana wa ni ne je wa me mu. Ancestors, please call on us today and drink our palm wine. Palm wine is a common ancestral libation, let's say. It's also common for Obatala. So, just because the invocation is using the word palm wine, it doesn't mean you have to offer palm wine. It's a symbolic reference to whatever libation you want to present. Second line, Egungun Baba Iya Yanawa Ojewa Bobi Pa. Ancestors, fathers, and mothers, please come so that you may accept offerings and split the kola nut. Typically, when an offering is made in traditional Yoruba culture of any kind, the obi is thrown to see if the offering is accepted, and in that cast of the obi kola, there's also an odu given that really speaks to the consequence of making the offering. And then the kola itself is split between the diviner as food, and it's usually broken up in little pieces and put on the shrine of the spirit you're speaking to, in this case the ancestor spirit. So Gungun wa yana wa, our ancestors please call, may it be so. So that's a simple kind of a generic OrIki that can be used anytime you make an offering as part of an abo, or as part of an odu, or just as part of your maybe daily or weekly spiritual practice when you present food to the ancestors. That's something you can say. But I like to do with that kind of prayer is type it up in large type so I can read it at a distance, laminate it, and pin it to the wall near the shrine so that it's easily accessible. So for the second OrIki, we're going to do OrIki Awon Baba Mi. So this specifically refers to ancestral spirits, collective ancestral spirits who are Ifa initiates, both male and female. Again, we spoke about this in earlier blogs that there's some belief in the diaspora that Awos don't go in possession, and this particular OrIki contradicts that understanding. So let me read through the whole OrIki first here. Egungun ani ogun akala ka ani oka leke 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 fosho. Ani fun fun adifa fun arumila baba non ko lashe le numo. Woni kola pe baba poilo de orun. Tani baba arumila moreri ni baba arumila. Nje moreri ni oto ashesi ni lenu morere mio. So let's take a look at the translation and see if we can get an understanding of what it means. So the first line, Egungun, Ani Ogun, Akala Ka Ani Oka Leke Leke for show. Spirit of the ancestors, mount the medium smoothly. The vulture circles the ceremony like a snake. So the idea of the snake is the ashe from the ancestors coming up from the earth. This is an OrIki that I typically do during the ancestral portion of any initiation, so that we can get access to the wisdom of the ancestors of the lineage. It's really, really effective in that regard. And it's been really, really effective with regard to providing information that perhaps was not otherwise known or clear. You know, you have to be a little cautious when you invoke the ancestors and they give you information that you didn't know. You want to look for some form of external validation, either by talking to an elder or testing it to see if it makes sense, or really analyzing the words spoken to see if they're consistent by breaking down the illusion with the intention of what it is you're doing. So, Ani o Fun Fun, Adifa Fun, Orumila, Baba, On Kolo She, Le Nu Mo. The white-feathered bird cleans us in flashes of light. The wisdom of the spirit of destiny is emitted in flashes of light. So if we remember from an earlier conversation about OrIki, we talked about the blackbird providing protection. The reference to the blackbird in Egun prayer is a cryptic reference to the idea that the Iami is part of the process of invoking possession by Egungun. Egungun being the collective spirit of our ancestors, not just one particular ancestral spirit. So now we're referring to the white-feathered birds. So the white-feathered birds in Iami are birds that are related to, I would say, both spiritual elevation, but even more commonly to the idea of justice, the idea of using the ashe of the mothers in a fair manner. So certainly you're asking the Egun of Ifa to come and make sure that the initiation that's being performed is being done to provide an elevation of consciousness, but it is also fair, if that makes sense. You know, sometimes I hear stories of people giving taboo and restrictions that just don't sound fair. Now, that's a bit of a judgment. But if we're concerned about that at all, this invocation can put a stop to anything that's of a dubious nature in that regard. All right, so where are we here? Okay, so Woni Kolo Poi Baba Poi Lo Deo Room, Tani Baba Rumila, More Ni Baba Rumila. So the wisdom is acknowledged as coming from the owner of the realm, the ancestors. Looking at the spirit of destiny, all good fortune comes from the spirit of destiny. So there's two references here, some of which get confused. So Baba Poi Lo Deo Room. Lo Deo Room means the rivers of heaven, or the rivers of the invisible realm. You know, there's some confusion in the use of the reference to that spirit in the diaspora, in my opinion. It could be dialectical differences, but typically the chief priest of the ancestors in Orun is Olofin. Olofin sometimes used synonymously in the diaspora with Olorun. In the dialect I speak from Ogun State, that would not be a synonym. But in any case, Lo De Orun, Olofin, we're asking the ancestors to really go to the primal source of ancestral wisdom. And we're asking specifically, and this is an interesting distinction, all good fortune comes from the spirit of destiny. So when we're doing an Ifa initiation, there's two spiritual forces at play. One is the Ara Orun, or the specific ancestor of the prophet Oromila. And this line of the OrIki is asking us for connection to the prophet Oromila. Now, from a metaphysical point of view, traditional Yoruba culture believes that anyone who receives Ifa becomes a son or daughter of Oromila and gains access to the memory of the life and teachings of the historical prophet. So it's important to realize that we have that ashe and to also invoke it clearly and consciously, and also begin to understand what that feels like, because at Ifa initiation we also go into possession with the spirit of Elah, and those are two distinctively different spiritual forces. They feel differently, they have different functions. Orumila can give us wisdom based on ancestral wisdom. Elah gives us wisdom based on communication directly with forces in nature that are not necessarily human. Elah also has the ability to shapeshift. So once you go into possession with Elah, by use of different orikis, you can morph that possession from Elah to specific orishas. So it's a different tool in the Ifa Orumila toolkit. So the last sentence here, Nje Morere no, To Ashe Si Nu Lenu Morere Mio. So 7 blessings is the power of light. The 7 blessings of light are the spiritual powers that come to us. May it be so. So this is an interesting spin on Ifa numerology, in a sense. You know, what we're talking about is the 8 principles of Odu Ifa, but in the counting system used for divination, the 8th principle becomes the first principle of the second 8. That's a little confusing. So what we're talking about here is the 7 blessings of life, death, transformation, rebirth, life, death, transformation. All right, so then the rebirth becomes also the life of the next phase. In the 8th position, transformation and rebirth, transformation, rebirth and life hold the same position. That's explained, and it's for that reason that the 4-day prayer cycle is confusing. In traditional Yoruba language, they refer to the 4-day prayer cycle as the 5-day cycle, because the first day of the new week and the last day of the previous week are the same day. And if you didn't know that, it would be deeply confusing. So hopefully that's clear. So, but we're asking for the fundamental blessings of elevation as taught by the Prophet Orumila, who speaks through the ancestral mediums of the Egbe who are performing the initiation. So that's what this OrIki is about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing both of these OrIki, not as the definitive song necessarily, but as an example of heart song, meaning the way I sing it, and we each have I would say almost the obligation to sing it in our own voice with our own melody and in tune with our own sense of the frequency of our ancestors. So, Egongon wa yana wa neni je wa memu. Egongon baba iya yana wa o je wa gbobi pa. Egongon wa yana wa she. So that's for the Adimu OrIki. Now we're going to do the one for OrIki Awam Baba Me. Literally OrIki, praising the consciousness Awo them Baba of those of my fathers, spiritual fathers. When we're talking about Orumila as a spiritual father, we're including both men and women. It's Yoruba language has a certain amount of ambivalence around gender pronouns. All right, so do not use the name of this OrIki as a justification for patriarchy, because that's not consistent with the ideas expressed here. All right, so Egon gon gon ani ogon akala kani oka leke fo sho ani ofun fun adifa fun Orumila Baba on kolo shele nu mo. Woni kolo pe Baba puelo de Orum tani Baba Orumila. More re ni Baba Orumila om je more re lo to ashe si ni le nu more re mi o ashe. So in this OrIki, I've spoken earlier in earlier blogs about when you come to the Ofo Ashe, or the power word, you can repeat it until it kind of morphs into a resonance. So the power words here are leke leke. So you would say akalaka ani oka leke 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 pacho. And the other power word here is morere. So tane baba rumli morere di baba o rumila. So those words become almost like onomatopoeias. I'm not saying that right. Onomatopoeias, which are words that don't necessarily have meaning, but they mimic a particular sound. So in this case, the words have meaning in their initial pronunciation, but they morph into a pure expression of the frequency, which is what we're looking for when we do this kind of work using OrIki as invocations. I'm going to now, before we call it a day, so let's see if we have any questions. Are there any questions? Any questions from anybody? Everybody welcome. Because I'm posting this in different formats, I'm not welcoming everybody the way I used to do. Forgive me for that, but I to give it a kind of a more generic format, if that makes sense. All right, so I don't see any questions. We're going to call that a day. Stay safe. Know you're loved and appreciated. We'll talk again soon. Ashe.